drawn to the stories of people who have pursued a passion of theirs, coupled that passion with a strong work ethic, and are now making the world a better place by offering a great product and employing dozens of people. Owning a business like Saiko Sushi is hard damn work. It takes constant attention. The owner either solves any and all business problems or goes out of business. If the former happens, there can be a great reward. If the latter happens, it likely bankrupts the owner, puts those dozens of people out of work. It can be high pressure. This is the first of two podcasts where I talk with a couple people I admire for taking on the challenge of running their own businesses. Anthony Pascale is one of these people. We talk about how we got to the point of owning 2 sushi restaurants, and then we talk sushi. I have immense respect for Anthony's work ethic, but even more than that, he's a great person all around, despite the fact that he prefers sticks to rush. Without any further ado, Anthony Pascale. Okay, Anthony Pascale, thank you so much for letting me interview you.
My pleasure.
I wanted to interview you because I think people will like learning how you start your own restaurant, how you end up starting your own restaurant. I've got some ideas in my head that I think I can attribute to you, but I'm not sure if it's you or my other buddy, Matt, who's a restaurant consultant. I forget if it was you or him that said, restaurants are actually really good investments. It's just that so few of the people who start them understand accounting and marketing. And that if you're weak in either one of those areas, you're not going to succeed in the restaurant business. You agree with that statement? And is that your statement?
It's not my statement, and I definitely agree with that statement.
So we went to college together.
We did.
Where I was, I don't even think I was even yet studying philosophy. You were taking a more pragmatic approach to life and studying business. How much value do you think that there was in your college education as a foundation for running your business?
I think there was a lot in terms of applying lessons learned in books to real life situations. You know, a little bit, but not that much. I took some accounting classes that were useful. I was able to understand bank loans and commercial real estates maybe a little bit better than other people who didn't have that background. But I think for the most part, it was more of a social, get along with goals in mind, and just learning how to kind of act in a mature environment where we all kind of have a place we're all trying to get via the same way, and just being realistic about getting there instead of being a kid and screwing around.
So if you don't mind, if we just do a quick history of Anthony Pascale. You graduate from college, and then where'd you go next?
I went back to New Jersey, and I had a short and unsuccessful streak. It lasted about 2 years. I was pretty focused in college about what I wanted to do, and I got exactly that. Where I ended up, my first real job out of college was exactly where I thought I wanted to be. I did it for 2 years, and I realized that I hated every second of it, and that I, in fact, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew it wasn't that. So I can I curse on this? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I said, fuck it. And I quit, and I pretty much got in the car and just drove west. And I stopped driving in Utah, and I thought I would take the winter off and kind of go skiing in Park City. And when I left there, I just made the best out of it. And, I ended up 4 years in Park City, basically as a ski bum.
Not really. It's just a ski bum, though, because that's where you learned to fall in love with making sushi, right?
Well, yeah, about right in the beginning of the second year, I met the guy who owned the sushi bar, one of the 2 sushi bars in town, and he was the chef there. And he was actually from like southbound Brook. And so we figured out we were from the same area, and he needed someone to help him out behind the sushi bar. And he, wasn't really into all the kind of the labor pool in Park City who were just going to blow it off every time there was a good snow day. So he asked me if I wanted to do it, and I didn't really have much else going on. So and I got really into it. I really enjoyed it. I really put a lot of effort into it. I was still able to ski every day because it was predominantly a nighttime job, and I still like to say that at Park City, in 4 years in Park City, I never once missed a day of skiing for work. But I did have to leave early a lot to get to the sushi job. But yeah, I mean, I did that for about 3 years in Park City. I skied in the morning, made sushi at night, and it was a pretty cool little life. And then after that, I left. I went home to New Jersey for a year, and then I came here to San Diego.
Did he start you making sushi like right away, or did you have to kind of work your way up in the sushi world?
So I started as the sushi bar apprentice. So I was behind the sushi bar working with those guys, but I wasn't quite doing, I was standing right next to them, but not doing the same thing as them. They were doing all the cool stuff and I was doing all the crappy stuff.
Like filling the rice bowl.
Yeah, cooking rice, chopping vegetables, sweeping the floor, that type of stuff. But I really loved it. I really got into it. And for some reason, I had the key to the restaurant. So when I decided to get really serious about it, I would go in early every day. I would go in, 2 hours early. I would go in off the clock, not clocked in, knew how to do. So when the other guys got there, they were kind of happy. They were stoked because a lot of work to do. I had just done it all. And so I just immersed myself in it. I just learned as much as I could. I, was a good employee so that those guys liked to teach me and they felt good about teaching me. And I just kept learning. But I was still the apprentice, even though I felt like I could do more than some of the other real sushi chefs. I was still the apprentice because they needed an apprentice and they didn't need a sushi chef. And it wasn't until it was the Saturday of Sundance Film Festival one year, and two of the sushi chefs got in a huge fight right before we opened. There was already a line out the door, and one of the guys just took his knives and walked out. And I looked at the other guy and I basically said, I guess I'm a sushi chef today, huh? And he was kind of pissed and didn't appreciate my joke very much, but that was the truth. And so that's kind of that's how I moved up.
Was that in the first year?
No, that was in probably the beginning of the third year.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. At what point did you realize that making sushi was going to be how you ran the rest of your life?
I don't know if I've come to that realization yet. But the first year that I started doing this, my little brother had graduated from college and he came out to spend the winter with me, sleeping on the couch. He worked in the restaurant. And in 1995, 1996, it was this crazy El Nino year. There was ridiculous amounts of snow. We had like 5 chest deep days. We probably had 15 more thigh deep days. And we got our season pass at this new resort that no one went to. And so, you get these awesome powder days in Park City, but you'd go to, Snowbird, Alta, Park City, Deer Valley, and great. It's tons of powder, massive crowds, everything's skied off by noon, and it's not a powder day anymore. But at the canyons where we were skiing, we were literally finding untracked 24 hours hadn't been skied yet. Skied to a moving chairlift most of the runs of that year. And so that was a pretty great year. And, I just had so much fun doing it that I kind of said, like, I had finally found the balance in my life that I was looking for and totally missing on Wall Street, where it was just 100% work. And I had to kind of take my fun where I could get it. I thought I had found something where I could really, really balance doing the things I love to do, fun wise, and also balance it with a career where I can make a little bit of money and kind of not hate myself and not, I don't know, be embarrassed about what I did or something like that.
Is being a sushi chef at that level, is it decent pay?
Well, it's like every job. I mean, there's Some restaurants will pay you pretty well and some will pay you pretty crappy. And there's a tip component, which can totally vary. But the reality is, there are guys who were making a lot more than me that were pretty crappy with their money and blew it all. Um,
Yeah.
and there are guys who know how to save their money regardless of what their salary is. They're still going to, if they're wise and don't blow it on a lot of dumb stuff, that they're gonna have some money in their lives at some point.
What year did you start your own sushi restaurant?
We opened on July the 5th, 2011. But I started trying to open my own restaurant, seriously trying, page one of the business plan 4 years before that. And so it was 4 years of essentially teaching myself how to start a business and open a restaurant. I would preface that open a restaurant and running a restaurant are completely different.
Sure. So you were in the business for 11 years, being a sushi chef, gaining experience. Were you involved in the managing of any restaurants before you started up your own business?
Yeah, I was the head sushi chef of like 3 different places before I opened my own.
And what responsibilities does that give you aside from, overseeing the preparation of the food?
I was responsible for ordering and essentially inventory levels, hiring, firing, um, dealing with employees, dealing with other staff, interacting with different departments like sushi bar and kitchen, timing food, stuff like that. Just generally leading a team.
So why do you think you at age in your early 30s by then, why were you entrusted to run the sushi bars for
That's a really, really interesting question. And um, I'm on the other side of the answer to this question, and I find it fascinating because the skills that you need to get to that level, right? To move up from I am one of a team of sushi chefs to now I'm the leader of the team of sushi chefs, actually have nothing to do with the skills required to perform the duties of the leader of the team. And in a lot of circumstances are even kind of counterintuitive. So in other words, I got to the level of being entrusted to run the team because I was really creative and I made awesome food and I could do it quickly and I could interact with customers and make sure they had a good time. And I was, my food was good and it was pretty and it tasted good and things like that. But when you get to kind of that first level of management, now it's all about, inventory levels and break violations and overtime. And it's just two completely different approaches to the same thing. And just, two different sides to your brain that you're working with. And very few people I found are good at, really good at. And so I see a lot of people struggle who are just, they shine. They're just superstars when they're working on the line, putting out food, and it's awesome. And all of those skills that make them shine kind of hurt them because they can't really switch their way of thinking to be more pragmatic about, now we're not working with flavor profiles, we're working with numbers. And and they don't understand why they go from being the superstar to really struggling and they don't understand why. But for me, I think because I had that finance background and because I had worked in finance and accounting before, it was easy for me to make that transition and to just, look at the same problem and think about it from two completely different points of view, and make sure that all those little boxes got checked kind of, we satisfied all of the needs here, not just one side of the spectrum or the other. I kind of forget what your exact question was. And I don't think that was the real answer to your question, but it was kind of in that direction.
I think it was. Going a little further down that road, how hard was it, or did you like having to turn on that aspect of your personality where you gotta, be able to discipline or fire an employee? How much, like, there's the whole, hey bro, I'm making sushi thing. If you're just the sushi chef and you're not managing things, how did you make peace with that part of it or embrace it?
Yeah, it was definitely more of embrace it. And it was just for me personally, and this is not the same for everybody, but for me personally, I kind of, as a chef, we say we never really stop learning. And I certainly didn't stop learning then, haven't stopped learning now, but I kind of felt like I was really at the top of my game in terms of what I could do as just a regular, a sushi chef on the line. And I just wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted to do more. I wanted to get more out of it for myself. I wanted to contribute more. Um, I don't know why. I just wasn't done.
Well, did you kind of know back then that, hey, I want to own my own restaurant someday, so I
Not
better
at all.
figure this out? No.
No, I thought finally I found a job that I could have and get a good paycheck and still be able to ski or surf or whatever. That's all I thought about in the beginning.
Really? And how long did you go on like that for? Like once you entered the management role before you decided, hey man, I want to be my own boss?
No, I got to I want to be my own boss far beyond before management role. And management role was just a step in that direction.
When I hear of kids like, hey, I want to become a chef and get in a restaurant, some of the culture that can happen inside a restaurant when it comes to people abusing various alcohol and or substances. If you were talking to a young person today or their parents about like, hey, my kid wants to become a chef, how much would you even bother spending any bandwidth on addressing that for that kid?
It's not something I would bring up, but if they asked me about it, I would be more than happy to tell them about all of the substance abuse that happened on Wall Street. And um, that stuff is out there in the world, and people are going to do what they're going to do based on their own personality and their own predilections toward that stuff. Their job, I don't think, is part of it. Their peers definitely could be, or could not be. I think if the kid's 18 years old and their parents are worried about them becoming a drug addict, they probably should have started worrying about that quite a few years earlier, and
Okay.
and gave them the social skills to survive in society without doing that. And that's not to say that there's nothing like hereditary or inherent about drug addiction as a disease, because it certainly could be. And there's definitely people who are afflicted with that,
Yeah.
everywhere. But they're going to go down that road, I think, whether they're working in kitchens or not.
How much do you feel like the culture of an individual restaurant matters towards the behavior habits of the employee pool? And forgive me for sort of like maybe speaking to what's potentially a shitty stereotype about the restaurant industry. I just I'm sort of fascinated by it though. And I guess as a corollary to that question, like, have you had to, do you feel like in times when you've had to let people go that their behavior was affected by problems that they couldn't manage?
100%. Yeah. I don't think any of that was brought about because they were working in a restaurant. But again, people struggle with substance abuse. People can handle different levels of different things. It's probably tied into other factors in their own personal lives and with their own mental health. It comes out in different ways. I think that looking back, this is not something I've really ever thought about till right now. Looking back, the reason that maybe it's a little more prevalent in restaurants is because in other careers that are sort of considered as real jobs, you might not be able to get to the level of performance, while you're still dealing with that. You wouldn't be able to get the job in the first place, whereas maybe in a restaurant you would.
Yeah.
And if you did get the job, it probably means that you kind of knew how to manage your addiction without allowing it to creep into your professional life, assuming that you had an addiction.
Sure. Sure.
you know.
Yeah, I'm not here to try to define the difference between abuse and addiction and
Right.
recreation or anything like that.
Nor am I.
I just know that it's it is, it's interesting. Yeah. What you say about Wall Street. You think of like Leonardo DiCaprio
Right.
in that scene with Matthew McConaughey in the beginning of the Wolf of Wall Street. How true to form do you think that scene is towards kind of what you saw when you were a currency trader?
I'm not exactly familiar with the scene 100%. What was the scene?
McConaughey's there. It's Leonardo DiCaprio's first day, and he's like pumping his chest, and they're at and he's like singing these like war songs that he's humming, and I forget if they did like a little cocaine or anything, but then he tells the waiter like bring us 2 drinks and then 2 more every 15 minutes until one of us passes out.
It's just movies, man. I don't think that happens anywhere.
All right. Yeah. And I might even delete that question from this because it's kind of a stupid one. This is the fun thing about being able to edit. You get to just kind of try things out. You know what I mean?
Sure.
All right. So the first restaurant you opened up, Saiko Sushi, Coronado, San Diego. How much, if you don't mind, can you speak to like, how did you coordinate? How did you get the money to pay for opening up your own restaurant? How did you coordinate the money to do that? So really, basically, the question is for anyone who might be listening is like, just talk about that to as much as you are comfortable, because I think people will be fascinated by it.
Well, for people who are thinking about doing this, for those people, the first step in terms of how do you get the money is you have to know how much money that you need, which you know, okay? If you don't know the answer to that question, you are not ready to ask anybody for any money yet. That goes back to that 4 years of learning how to open a restaurant that I was talking about. So there's tons and tons of work that goes into doing that no amount of training as a chef will prepare you for. And honestly, I don't know that there is a school you can go to learn how to do that. Every scenario is different. Even me opening up the same restaurant in 2 different locations is completely different, based on all the essentially construction and equipment that has to go into a spot that is really based on what's there already.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with you. It has all been predetermined before you even saw the place, right? What kind of condition is the spot in? So you have to know how much you're going to need, which is very complicated. Once we did that, or once we were able to basically say, at least convince people we don't know how much we need. This is our best guess, and this is how we got there, and that all seemed to make sense and got people comfortable with the fact that we probably knew what we were doing. I had a business partner at the time who's since no longer involved. We each had some savings, so we started there. We each had parents, so that was the next place we went to, and they each contributed a little bit of money, but we didn't have enough. And so now we needed an investor or multiple. And so this was incredibly frustrating. Lots of people came out of the woodwork to approach us to say they wanted to invest, and they all went away real quick when it was time to write a check. We did get pretty lucky. We found one guy. My business partner's wife had been a bartender at a restaurant, and this guy was an investor in that restaurant. He was a restaurant investor. He liked the industry. He liked to be part of it without essentially, doing the day-to-day operations. He believed in us. He believed in our concept. You actually sat at a sushi bar with him and John Carlson and put in plenty of good words for me. So you were probably pretty instrumental in that. And we were able to convince him to give us some money. Then we had to answer his question of how much do I get paid back? Again, very complicated. And so we put together a structure that, between our money, our parents' money, and his money, some was in debt and some was in equity. And it was essentially a relatively simple financing structure that we put together that made everybody happy and everybody to make a little bit of money. And then everybody started writing checks.
When did he get cashed out?
Well, he has some debt and some equity.
Okay.
His debt is paid back already, so all our loans are paid back. But the nature of equity is you don't get cashed out, so he's in it forever.
Okay. Until you sell or whatever.
Sorry. I can sell, I can buy him out. He can ask to be bought out. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a very strong exit plan? Like, because I'm just the reason why I asked the question is someone told me, I don't think it was you, but who was talking about starting a business, said one of the most important things about creating a business partnership with someone is, the first thing you do is you decide how do we break up,
Right.
how does somebody get out of this?
Right. So yeah, the prenup. That is a pretty big part of it. That is spelled out in our operating agreement, right? It's a legal document that defines the corporate structure, and it defines everyone's obligations. It defines everyone's, what they're entitled to, what they're obligated to do, and how they would get out if they wanted to. So in terms of the exit strategy of a single member of the organization, that is completely defined in a legal document. What I think about when I hear the term exit strategy is what happens when we open the restaurant and we realize this restaurant is failing or has failed already. Now what do we do? And whoever said that was right. That's really important to have a good exit strategy. And our exit strategy when we opened the first restaurant was, Evan and Anthony get fucked and you guys are all good. So, we would have signed our lives away to open this restaurant. So that basically the most the investors could lose was what they put in.
Okay. So hang on. That's what I want to clarify. Mm-hmm. When you say Evan and Anthony get hosed and the other dudes are good, mm-hmm. they still could lose their money. Like you weren't going to owe them their money, were you?
Right.
Like they were betting on your competence. Right.
So that's correct. I mean, it was an investment. All investments have an inherent amount of risk.
Yeah.
Right. Without risk there, you wouldn't have a reward. So they would lose. They could lose 100% of their contribution and no more. Me, on the other hand, and my business partner at the time, we had to essentially personally guarantee the lease. We did not personally guarantee any of the investments, but we did have to personally guarantee the commercial lease, which means, right, so we don't sign the lease as our individual, the corporate entity signs the lease.
Yeah.
Well, if the corporate entity is dissolved, the landlord has no one to sue. So we had to personally guarantee the lease, stating that were the corporate entity be dissolved, that myself and my former partner, we would be personally responsible for any obligations to the landlord that we might have, which basically means we'd have to keep writing that rent check, or at least be liable to keep writing that rent check until he found someone else to take over the lease.
And unlike landlord-tenant law, you don't get to just go, oh, hey, I lost my job, I'm out. Like commercial leases are entirely in force, and there's no getting out.
He could leave my assets,
Okay.
Right. He could do all that.
And what was the exposure on that? Like are you talking like a typical house mortgage payment, or like something an order of magnitude higher than that as far as your lease payment?
You talking about the amount of the payment I write every month?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want you to have to expose your backside here.
Oh, it was way higher. It was at the time it was, way more than double my house payment. There's no way I would have been able to write that check if I lost the business.
Okay. You would have been hosed.
No chance.
And you would have had to have
Right.
come to some type of settlement with the landlord.
Yeah.
But aren't most commercial leases also assignable though? That like, you know, if you found somebody else that wanted to take over the space, you could.
Right. If we could find somebody else. Right. Right.
So
You know, explore that, right? If I'm the landlord and I have a personal guarantee with someone and he says, I'm going to assign this lease to someone else, that's wonderful. But I don't have to let that guy out of his personal guarantee. He can still personally guarantee the new guy's lease payments. Right.
yeah.
So that's part of it. And when I bought my partner out, my landlord didn't let him out of that personal guarantee. So even though he wasn't involved in the restaurant anymore, I cashed him out. He couldn't do anything. If I failed, my landlord still could have went after him and his assets.
But I'm assuming that part of your partner's exit plan was when you renew the lease, his name's off it.
When that's correct. And we did renew the lease just recently, although I was able to negotiate that the personal guarantee would be gone. So there is no more personal guarantee.
Yeah, I remember my dad's business when he was buying a lot of equipment from and using National Westminster Bank. Their first negotiation was they wanted, you know, him to sign personally, and you know, he told him to go pound sand, which he could because he kept meticulous books and could show them that, you know, and so it's interesting because it makes me think about the theme of credibility, right? So there's one answer of like, how do you start a restaurant? Well, you gotta save the money. You need to know how much money, yada, yada, yada. But the big theme that I'm hearing and seeing through this is you got to start working towards gaining credibility from day one. You know,
that's so true on a lot of levels. You know, anyone who's contributing anything to this, any of the investors, any of the equipment guys, for sure the landlord, the one thing they don't want to have happen is for me to just quit. You know, they need assurances that I couldn't quit, right? I can't just walk away and make it their problem. Everybody, that's what everybody needs. It's probably the only thing that they really need is to make sure that they're not going to all of a sudden get a phone call and they have to go in and run the restaurant.
At your 2 restaurants, and you're also involved with a third right now, but certainly at the first 2, do you know, not for us to delve too much into the political or greater themes of any type of ism, but how much do you feel the success of any business, especially a small business, has to do with someone having skin in the game? If there was no risk of you losing your ass if it didn't go well, do you think that it would be as good of a restaurant as it is today?
Well, that's certainly a motivator. That was not what motivated me. I did it because I loved it. I loved the food. I loved being creative. I loved finally being able to say to the world, you know, all right, I spent the last 10 years of my life training this, and now I'm going to interpret it through my eyes, and you guys have to deal with it, not some menu that my boss is making me make. You know what I mean? Like that. That was my motivation. Would it have been the same if I didn't personally guarantee this lease? I don't know, man. I hope so. You know, I really do. I think that really comes down to integrity. And I've always felt that that's how I've made my food, with integrity. I never compromised anything. You know, we have this thing where I try to use wild caught local fish, and I won't compromise that. You know, that's what our food is about. And I'm not going to change that because I can get a different fish cheaper or something like that. You know, to me, that's integrity. I put my soul on the plate every time I make something. And I really like to think that my motivation for that was not a personal guarantee. It was for my love of this food.
All right. Tell me more about the wild caught local fish. I mean, I've eaten what I thought was really good sushi in Denver, Colorado.
Right.
Right.
You probably did eat really good sushi in Denver, Colorado.
But it obviously could not have adhered to the ethos of wild caught local fish. So you're saying that nothing at Saiko Sushi is like flown in from Massachusetts, or nothing?
That's not true because we have salmon, and there is no salmon in San Diego.
Okay.
But we use a salmon from a farm in New Zealand. I went there to the farm. I know the people. I really 100% stand behind the product, and we use that. We don't pretend that it's local. We kind of, you know, show off the fact that it's from this farm in New Zealand. It was the first salmon farm in the world certified green by the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is a really big deal.
Yeah,
and
my impression of salmon farms are they are massive polluters, and you're eating fish that has to be dyed orange because of just they were raised. What makes that salmon farm different in New Zealand?
so these guys are really cool. So these guys in New Zealand learned to hatch salmon from eggs, essentially breed salmon from eggs, and they took these eggs to the top of Mount Cook in New Zealand, nowhere near an ocean, and they made their salmon farms in the tributaries, right, in the glacial runoffs from Mount Cook. So the water is that, you know, there's no industry above them, right? So there's nothing polluting this water. It's flowing down from the glacier. It's like 10,000 years old ice that's melting, right? The mineral content is super high. Like the water gets this crazy metallic blue color. We drank the water from very close to the salmon farm. It's great. So the water is one thing, right? The commitment to sustainable diet that they feed the fish is another thing. Buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. I think what really makes this fish great is the containment units that are essentially make up this farm in these tributaries. They can be a certain size and no more. So when the salmon farm wants to grow and expand their business, they don't make the farm bigger, they make another little farm in another tributary, right? So they've got the formula down to how many salmon in how much space to produce the product that they want. But the water, you know, these tributaries, the water is moving at this crazy rate of like 2 million gallons a minute or something like that move through this thing. So the salmon is essentially exercising, right? As opposed to like every other animal and every other farm in the world that like we sell this shit by the pound. So just stand there, keep eating, get fat, I make more money. These guys are not doing that. And so the king salmon that they use is a little different from other fish, which store their fat intramuscular, right? Fish and animals, including humans, right? They store fat different ways so that when they exercise, they would burn muscle before fat, right?
Burn fat before muscle.
Sorry. No. They burn muscle before fat. So when they die, there's a bunch of fat in there. The fat oxidizes, and that's what makes it taste fishy. But king salmon store their fat subcutaneously. They store it under their skin. So when they exercise, they burn fat first.
Okay.
So when they die, there's no fat in there. They're very lean, and there's nothing to oxidize and taste fishy.
Is king salmon the only type of salmon you get from this fish farm?
It's the only thing they do.
The salmon comes from New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
The tuna caught local.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see what I got here?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about this guy.
That is, I'm going to guess and say a 100-pound wild caught San Diego bluefin tuna. No, I don't think it's a bluefin tuna because I'm wearing a beanie, which means it's wintertime and we're not getting a lot of bluefin in the winter. So it's probably a big eye tuna. I bought off of a grading table at Catalina Offshore Products. So a fishing boat came in, they docked in San Diego. They probably had 20,000 pounds of tuna. They put it on a truck, drove it across town to Catalina, where they offloaded onto a big grading table. I was there. I mean, I remember this. I was there. I was with the owner. You know, we were grading the tuna. I looked for the size that I wanted, you know, found the best grade. We negotiated the price. I threw it in the back of my car, drove it to work, and now I'm cutting it up.
When you say grading system, I'm picturing the TV show Wild Tuna, and you got that with the metal straw that he sticks into
Yep. Yes.
that's exactly how it's done.
That's the core sample.
Yeah.
And we stick that spike in there and pull out some of the meat closer to the spine to check the fat levels.
Yeah.
And then we take a little tail sample. So we cut a piece off by the tail. We can look at the bloodline. We can look at the meat down there.
Okay.
But yes.
How reliable are those core samples? Do you ever run into quality control issues? I mean, have you ever had like opened up a tuna and been like, man, this this isn't what I expected. It's not even usable. And then if so, who eats that?
So the answer to your question is yes. They're not building this stuff in a factory, right? It's what comes out of the ocean. We all take what we can get. For the most part, I don't know that I've ever got a fish that I've picked out that has been not usable.
Okay.
There's certainly better qualities than others. I like to feel like I did a pretty good job of writing a menu where I have some space on my menu for fish that's perfectly fresh, but maybe not sushi quality, right? Our menu is designed for, day one, it's on the sushi bar. Day two, it's in the kitchen. Day three, it's the lunch special, right? None of that is by any means rotten or past its prime or anything like that. It's just sushi quality is pretty high standards. But part of being a chef is understanding that the product you get will almost never be perfect, and it's kind of up to you to make it usable and make it good. I mean, what's the point of having any skill as a chef if what you're getting is perfect every time? There's nothing to do to it.
So that's an interesting point, and I want to talk about my first interview that I did with Mike Martz. Talked about how much you have to overcome letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Do you even think in those terms? I mean, obviously now you got a couple decades experience and things are coming naturally and intuitive to you, but was that harder in the beginning of owning your own restaurant? Like wanting things to be perfect and having to let it go and just have it be good enough?
That perfect being the enemy of good is such a weird phrase because it works the other way too, right? Good is the enemy of perfect. And it's almost never that easy, right? It's almost never, do I want it to be good or do I want it to be perfect? There's almost always some other factors that are going to kind of dictate what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and what you're going to end up with. One of them might be time. Like, I can spend 20 minutes on this job and make it pretty good. I can spend 2 hours and make it perfect, but maybe I don't have 2 hours. Maybe I only have 20 minutes, that type of stuff. So, for me, I feel like the more I try to plan this stuff in advance, the more it's just going to get fucked up. And it's really more of kind of just going with it, going with the flow, letting things kind of work themselves out, making the best of a situation and see what you're going to end up with.
I was just thinking about this before we started this Zoom meeting, and I realized that I've shifted as far as what I think the best sushi in the world is, or at least my go-to favorite. And I'm not trying to flatter you too much or anything, but like when I come to your place, it is an order of magnitude better than anywhere else that I ever go. I mean, your chef that, made me that roll the other day, and I loved doing that. And it, like, where you just walk in and you say to the guy, hey man, make me your best thing. And then boom, comes out and it's this insane thing that I never would have thought of or that I would have loved. The thing that I like about what you do is that you don't get too crazy with like the American, hey, let's put mayo in freaking everything, or do the, the same 7 rolls that are on the menu at every sushi restaurant. And it seems to somehow honor like traditional Japanese from and my sense of what traditional Japanese was informed by Ikasa at a Shumi in Somerville, New Jersey,
Mhm.
where, and what's funny is I remember in the beginning days of you starting to make sushi, it was around the same time that I was just starting to eat sushi for the first time. And I would go and sit at the sushi bar at Shumi in Somerville. And it felt really cool because here's this dude who spent the first 20 years of his sushi career making, sushi over in Tokyo. He's a Japanese guy. His English is not very good. And so, you feel like you're eating the real, authentic stuff. And I remember feeling a little bit with you back then, like, well, Anthony, you can have your opinions, but Ikasa says to do this or that with sushi and whatnot. And dude, I got to tell you, like, it's funny because I've never realized the conscious shift, but when I was thinking about it before this, this interview, it's like, dude, you're now the person that I tell people about. Like, yeah, you might think you eat good sushi, but if you're ever in San Diego, you got to go check out Saiko Sushi because it's amazing.
We really try to downplay the whole Japanese thing, right? And this has been kind of weird. I mean, I thought, I did sushi for 5 minutes and thought I knew more about Japanese culture than everybody else. And then I went to Japan for the first time and I thought I was going to impress everybody by how much I knew about Japanese stuff. And I didn't know shit. I didn't know the first thing. And to this day, I could not walk into a restaurant in Japan and order a glass of water. I wouldn't get a glass of water. I would get confused looks. I don't know shit about Japanese culture. And the only thing I know about it is the only way to respect it is to understand you're not part of it. I mean, unless you are, but, and this really kind of came full circle to me. This is really interesting. The first time I was there and we went to the Italian restaurant in Japan. And this blew my mind, right? Because from across the room, it just looked like Italian food that we'd been used to growing up. But as I got closer, I was, holy shit, what's going on here? And on some levels, just like, a tomato in Japan just doesn't taste like a tomato here. It's not better or worse. It's just a little bit different. Plus, you got like these cultural influences, like, yeah, that's a plate of spaghetti and meatballs, but that guy's seasoning it with soy sauce and eating it with chopsticks, and it again, not bad, not good, just different. And then I just got floored. I was like, holy shit, like that's exactly how those guys feel when they come to the US and eat sushi. And all right, slam on the brakes here, man. And I went home, threw the menus away, reprinted them all with no Japanese words on there. We're not speaking Japanese anymore. We're not trying to be Japanese. We're not going to get any more Japanese fish. We're a bunch of posers, man. We all stand up here, think we know what's going on. We have no fucking idea. So let's not pretend. Let's try to, like, we know what we know. We can do what we can do. So let's really try to claim this as our own and do this for ourselves. We're in San Diego. So we're going to, not just use San Diego seafood, but like, let's get our produce from local too. Let's go to the farmer's market. Let's talk to the farmers. Let's do all this stuff, and not pretend, not stand here and pretend that we're Japanese, but let's be from San Diego and make this our own thing. And I think it's been, I don't know, some people like it, some people don't. Screw them. I like it. So this is what we're going to do.
That's really cool. Okay. Tell me about this plate that we're looking at.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you right now, I didn't make this.
Okay.
This is just from the restaurant's Instagram page.
Yeah.
Somebody else made this, and I'll say that because they've plated their rolls backwards. They're supposed to be pointing the other way. And if I made it, they would have been pointing the other way.
Okay.
That roll in front is just a standard rainbow roll, right? You can get that anywhere. That roll in back, that is probably our best selling roll in the North Park location. That's called a Dear John roll. So inside would be some spicy crab and fresh mango and jicama. On top is salmon. That is a house-made aioli, a curry aioli that we do. with some scallion, some puffed rice, and then you can't see it, but there's like some black lava salt on there as well.
That looks awesome. So back in the day when I was always like looking for Ike from, Shumi to tell me whether or not I should dip it in soy sauce or not. Do you express strong opinions as a chef as far as what someone should do? Because I'm just guessing that the game plan for this plate would be, don't use soy sauce on the roll with the curry sauce on it in the back, but use soy sauce for everything else.
You're almost right. Yeah, I think if the dish has been seasoned already, don't put more soy sauce on there. Right. Yeah. So yes, rainbow roll, soy sauce. Dear John roll. If you want soy sauce, knock yourself out. There's no right or wrong here, but it's seasoned already and doesn't necessarily need soy sauce. There's 2 nigiri up in front there, right? The salmon, again, yeah, soy sauce, great. But that tuna has actually been marinated in soy sauce already, sake and soy sauce. So okay. I would say no soy sauce on that.
And here's the thing, and I want to be, I don't know, a little bit pedantic or particular here, but the idea isn't that, hey man, I want to be some poser who ensures that I just eat sushi in line with the sushi culture and doing what's going to please my chef. But it's more like, for a lot of people, and I think myself still included, when you go eat some sushi, it's kind of the fun about it is learning a little bit about what you're doing and what the intent of the chef is. And so it's just kind of like that loose, like, hey man, here's how I'm thinking about the flavor here. Mm-hmm. And so maybe try it that way. And like you say, if you want some soy sauce, then knock your,
yeah, right.
Not the soy sauce police.
Yeah. There's 8 bites there, man. Try the first one without it and try the second one with it, then go from there. But there's no right or wrong. Just because I think you shouldn't put soy sauce on it, like somebody else might really like it with soy sauce. It doesn't mean like that guy's an asshole or anything. It just means he prefers it with a little soy sauce.
Who's the woman in the picture?
That's Mommy. That's my wife. That's her name. Mommy is a common first name in Japan. She's actually in Japan right now with our 11-year-old daughter, Michaela. They come home next week. She, in the beginning, didn't really spend any time in the restaurant. And when we opened, Michaela was 1. So Mommy was a stay-at-home mommy. But now she's taken more of a role doing some accounting and some managing as well.
Cool. Is she liking that?
She'd probably rather stay home, but I think if she's gonna have a job, I think it's a pretty good job for her. She seems to have a good time.
Did you kind of force her into it? I don't mean that in some type of, oppressive patriarchal way.
We talked about it. Sorry, we talked about it. I don't necessarily think I forced her, as opposed to we needed her to do that.
I hear you.
And she looked at it as we, and so she did it. And she actually just started. She started just with the accounting.
Okay.
And then has moved into some managing as well. And a lot of this is being facilitated as Michaela gets a little older and can be in school and stuff like that.
Tell me about the words on the chalkboard behind you.
So that's a pretty cool chalkboard. That is a map of Japan broken down into prefectures, which are like states here. And this is our sake menu. And so it shows every sake that we serve and what prefecture it comes from.
You guys take sake pretty seriously at Saiko Sushi, don't you?
We take sake very seriously at Saiko Sushi. We get international recognition for our sake menu. I am an advanced sake professional, which is a degree similar to that of a sommelier at some level. I took the classes that I took. Eventually, I had to go to Japan to take the classes. They were still taught in English, but the class just physically was in Japan. We have 27 sakes by the glass at the North Park location, a little bit less in Coronado. We sell a ton of sake. I've had countless people from all over the country. I've met them at different sake functions, and tell me how they, they own a restaurant and they modeled their menu after mine, or, there a lot of the sake reps will kind of teach restaurateurs how to write a sake menu, and they'll just copy mine. Which, it's my menu now, but the creation of it was actually my business partner had a lot more to do with than I did. He's really the one that kind of pioneered this, and I sort of took it over from him.
Is it like nails on a chalkboard for you, for me to tell you that my favorite sake is just the cheap hot sake?
No, man, I drink Coors Light, Again, there's no right and wrong answer. Drink what you like. Don't let anyone tell you that you're wrong for liking something.
What's going on here?
So this is kind of like our little bread and butter right here. And this is called a Blackboard Flight. So, we have a bunch of different blackboards in the restaurant where we write all the specials on. And there's one for just like the weird local fish that we've got in that day that are not on the menu. And, my days, I get up in the morning and I go to the dock, or I go to the fish market, talk to wholesalers or fishermen, see what's around, see what I can find. A lot of it, some of it I've not worked with before, but I'll just buy it and bring it back to the restaurant and play with it and figure it out. And we'll put that up on a special board where you can order it a la carte. I'll take that one. Or, we'll call it a Blackboard Flight, and you can get one piece of each one as a little combo. I think it's the coolest thing in the restaurant. And now, as we've kind of been doing this for 10 years, we try to make it a little interesting for ourselves, to where we won't just throw fish up there. We'll kind of do a little sauce or a garnish for each one, try to make it special, complement the fish, make it cooler. Again, it's just a really, really fun way to eat this fish. It's kind of, every bite is just different. You can come in and, and even the same, like, you might try a fish and maybe come in a week later, it's the same fish, but we're going to sauce and garnish it different, so it'll taste different.
Okay.
We both restaurants, we just get a lot of neighborhood repeat customers, and we don't want them to get bored, so we try to just keep it fresh, keep changing stuff up a little bit, so they can come in, they don't have to think about it too much, and they can still get turned on to new stuff, and like that.
What's going on with the drink pouch?
So that was a COVID thing. When everybody was on lockdown, San Diego or maybe California, maybe it was California, basically said all the restaurants could sell alcohol to go, whereas before that was a special part of a liquor license that not very many people had.
Okay.
And so we mixed cocktail fruit on those little pouches and tried to sell it to survive during COVID. We don't do it anymore.
Are you not allowed to anymore?
No, I'll still sell, stuff to go. It's just there's not really demand for it anymore.
So you're saying one regulation went your way, at least during COVID?
There were definitely some government officials who tried to help, or at least tried to pretend like they were helping.
Tuna?
That is a big eye tuna, much smaller than the other one. That was probably 35 pounds.
Is this even a night's worth of fish?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But would that just stay at the one restaurant, or would you divvy it up between restaurants?
So that particular night, I don't even know that we used that tuna. It was just someone wanted to come in and take a bunch of pictures of me breaking down a tuna. So they brought the tuna, and that's in my kitchen. I mean, I remember that night, the restaurant was open. There was like, some of my friends were actually standing right behind the photographer there watching me break it down. And that's just that particular picture. But for me, I try to share the fish between the restaurants so I can turn it over faster.
Okay.
So yeah, this is really cool.
Okay, lay it on me.
This is really cool. So this is just an example. In San Diego, downtown San Diego, every Saturday, there's like a farmer's market for fishermen. It is called the Tuna Harbor Dockside Market. You can see it on the little tag right there on the top. Okay. And so it's on a pier downtown, and the fishermen, I mean, some of them come in cars, but some of them will just take the boat up to this pier and offload fish from their boat. and it's open to the public, I kind of sneak in there early and just try to buy as much as I can there. And so from the top, that first fish is a bonito. Most fishermen don't like this fish. It doesn't last very long, and it doesn't cook up very well. But for sushi, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And we sear it. And it's a pretty gamey fish, so we'll sear it.
I'm familiar.
Right, we'll dress it with garlic and ginger and stuff like that, or other stuff. And we see them in San Diego mainly in the summertime. This was pretty recently. The next fish has been my favorite this year, and that's Barracuda. This we see for a very short time at the end of the summer in San Diego. The season might even be over already, but they're so great. There's gnarly little white fish. I'll smoke it and do like some pickled onions on there. The texture is great. It's really kind of soft and fatty. And I've been loving that fish this year. The red fish on there is also very, very cool. That's called a sheephead. They swim out in the kelp patties. Right. You bought one once.
Yeah, but hang on. I want to make sure. I want to test my own memory before you.
Right.
And then correct me if I'm wrong. They eat a lot of shellfish.
Correct.
And I believe you told me to notice the taste of the shellfish that they eat, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, right.
What are they eating exactly?
They have these really like big gnarly teeth to crack through shells. So they'll basically feast on crab, lobster, and sea urchin out here off Point Loma in San Diego. But you can really just taste how that rich, buttery shellfish flavor comes through, cooked or raw. I think it's great. And then the little guy on the bottom there, that's a greenback mackerel. Also one of my favorite fish to use here in San Diego.
Is that the normal size of a mackerel?
Yeah. I mean, they really vary. They get a lot smaller and a lot bigger. And there's a lot of different kinds of mackerel. This is a greenback mackerel. So this is a standard size for a greenback. And it's actually, again, I'll be picking these out. I'm not like placing an order for them. So I'll try to look for that size.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking of all the times that I've had mackerel nigiri, and I just looking at that fish, what a giant pain in the ass it must be for you to make mackerel sushi. Am I wrong? Is it kind of like the smaller fish is harder to make, or
they're all a pain in the ass, man? No, it's everyone's different. Every fish is different. The way you break it down, the way you fillet it. No, nothing's harder or easier. It's just all cool.
Okay, so let's go into. You sent me. Who is this ugly mofo?
This is a black cod, indigenous to San Diego and probably lots of different parts of the world. You'll see this on most sushi bars cooked. They marinate it in miso.
Okay.
Which is delicious and awesome. Lately, I've been using it for sushi and loving it. I'll leave the skin on, give it a quick little sear. And when they're real fresh, like this one, when I'm getting them, I mean, that fish still had like a little rigor to it when I bought it.
Yeah.
When they're that fresh, I'll take the liver out and cook the liver and kind of garnish it with a little of its own liver. And it's so good.
Who's this guy?
That's a bluefin tuna.
Why does the bluefin have yellow fins on him?
Yeah, I don't know why. The way I know it's a bluefin is I'm looking at his pectoral fin, that fin on the side, right behind its cheek.
Yeah. And
it's kind of short and stubby. Okay. So that would be bluefin. If it was longer, it would be a big eye or a yellowfin.
Tuna?
That's Opa, which will probably be the next picture.
Okay.
So yeah, you're kind of going in backwards order.
Okay, yeah. So hang on a second. All right, what do we got going on here?
All right. So this is Driscoll's Wharf, about 5 minutes from my house. That guy on the left in the blue shirt, that's Nick Hayworth. His dad is Dave Hayworth, who is really one of the prominent fishermen in San Diego. And now Nick's coming up. That's a commercial fishing boat. It's kind of hard to see, but you know that Opa, which is probably about 100 pounds, maybe 120, it's on a crane, right? And they're pulling it up out of the hull. You can't really see the hull. It's maybe
Yeah.
like a little kind of behind Nick there. And that white thing on the ground, that's the cover that goes over the hull. So
Flatfish,
that
almost kind of evocative of a halibut. I mean, just from the just big and flat.
big and flat, yes, but Opa is weird, man. Opa is its own thing. And it's once you start after big and flat, it's nothing like a halibut or any other fish. It's the only warm-blooded fish in the ocean.
Really?
So that boat went out for, I don't know, probably 2 weeks, and he came back with tuna and Opa and maybe some other stuff, but pretty much just tuna and Opa. So I bought that fish from Nick, threw it in the back of the truck, drove it 15 minutes to the restaurant, put it on a prep table. It's too big, for any of the cutting boards. So I just found a cardboard box and broke it down to kind of use as cutting board. You can see, hold them back up a little bit.
Okay.
Nick took the guts out, right? They do that at sea to preserve them a little bit.
Okay.
And then that little circular mark down in the kind of lower right-hand side, that was a parasite.
Really? How typical is having parasites?
Yeah. Very, very typical.
Okay. Very typical to have parasites.
Yeah. But when I say parasite, I don't mean like a worm inside the fish, him from the outside.
And so how much do you got to excise out of there of where the parasite was? Is that just that hole is just like a little quarter size and you're good, or what?
Yeah, it probably doesn't really go much past the skin. It's really a non-factor.
Okay. You ready for the next frame?
Yep.
What are the two round steak-like things?
Those are very cool. Those are called the abductor muscles.
Okay.
And you can see the hole where it came out of. There's one on each side. And so the Opa is weird for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it doesn't use its back fin to propel itself like other fish. It uses its pectoral fins, right? Fins on the side.
Really?
And so those abductor muscles are what move the pectoral fin. And they're huge and they're really strong because the Opa is 120 pounds, right? And that's what is predominantly moving this thing through the water. So these are these giant, crazy muscles, and we can eat them, but it's not meat, it's muscle, and so it just behaves totally different than the rest of that fish, and it's cool, man. It kind of once we start cooking it, it's kind of more like beef or pork. A lot of guys will use it to make like meatloaf or burger patties or bolognese sauce, stuff like that, sausage. It's pretty great. We do little steaks with them. It's kind of awesome.
Those two pectoral fin muscles, you don't use those for sushi? That would be a cooked meat.
And those two little like triangle things above them, that's the belly. I wouldn't eat those raw either. We cook those down. They're pretty great. It's just throw on a grill and cook over open flame.
Okay, but the two big kind of fillets above that's what you use for sushi?
Those are the top loins.
Okay.
And those are great for sushi. That little bowl in between them all is just a little kind of odds and ends that came off the fish.
Okay.
Those two, then there's 4 strips on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
The lower two are really weird. They kind of came off, you can kind of see where one of them came off right next to the abductor muscle. That's kind of part of the belly that we do eat raw. It's not quite as dense as those bellies are, and it's got this really gnarly fat cap, and so we just kind of make sushi, like give it a quick little sear with a torch, and the fat melts, and oh, it's so good, man. It's just like nothing I've ever had before. And then those little strips on top there, again, those are similar to the belly, just less dense, more fat. And I love to throw those on the grill and just get the skin really, really crisp. It's just fish skin and fish fat, and it's so good, man. It's really, really good.
So the picture on the next page that I'm about to show up, where did it come from on this table? I mean, hypothetically.
All the nigiri?
Yeah.
All that prepared, the long plate with all that prepared nigiri?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to it next, but I just want people to be able to visualize where it came from before I before I turn the frame.
Right. Sorry, yeah, it came from one of those top loins up on top, those big odd shaped loins.
All right, so
yeah,
that's some good looking sushi.
Yeah, it was delicious.
Tell me about the oil or the sauce that you got on it already.
So there's actually 3 sauces on there. I just kind of caramelized some soy sauce with a little bit of sugar to thicken it up and sweeten it. A little chili sauce, sriracha. And then the lighter colored sauce is called Ryu, which is a blend of sesame and chili oil. And like that was just our snack while I was breaking that fish down. That didn't go to a customer or anything. I mean, it was awesome. It could have. It was certainly restaurant quality. Yeah. But it was kind of it was in the morning and we were working and I was a little hungry, so I made everybody some sushi.
That's great. I think we've already talked about all these, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. One last question though.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the greatest prog rock band in all of rock and roll history?
It's certainly a subjective question. I mean, everybody has their own opinions.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
I understand
a definitive answer.
As far as I know, there's only one prog rock band that Sushi rolls named after their songs.
So I take it there are some Styx rolls going on at Saiko Sushi?
At the North Park location, every roll on the menu, the house rolls that we come up with our own like unique names for, not like song or album.
Dude, I'm just going to tell you that I honestly did put on that Styx album and I gave it the college try on the drive up from your sushi restaurant up to LA the other day. But it's
not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. We'll have to pick some other bands that we could go to a concert together.
I kind of thought about this question this morning, and I remember very vividly. I was in the first grade, and I had a friend named Peter Byrne. He lived in Bridgewater, and I was playing at his house. And he had an older sister named Erin, and she was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years older. And she had some girlfriends over, and they were in her room listening to the new Styx record that had come out that time and was popular. You know what I mean? And we were doing something, and I looked over, and I was like, "What the hell's going on over there? Like, I don't want to play this anymore. I want to go see what that is." And I don't think it had anything to do with the music. I think it was wasn't like my first introduction to music. It was my first introduction to a room full of girls. And I there may or may not be some association going on there, but I associated like all these new feelings to this music that was playing. And so on the way home, I like made my mom stop at the record store and buy the record on vinyl, and then come home and like teach me how to use the stereo so I could listen to it. I mean, I was 6 or 7 in the first grade. The copyright stamp on the record is 1979. I still have it. But I think that's where that all started.
It's pretty interesting because given that you have, I mean, we could do the genteel thing and be like, well, everything's subjective and there isn't a greatest prog rock band in the history of the world, and that's fine and all. But I'm glad to learn that your love of Styx comes from you just wanting to hang out with chicks, because it couldn't be fundamentally more opposite to like one of the things that I love about going to a Rush concert is, there's no one there pretending to like try to be attractive to women. They're just there enjoying the music that resonates with their soul of being a dude, and I mean, ironically, on the last tour, there were like 1 or 2 pretty girls. I remember I walked up to this couple, obviously, and they were like our age, and I just said, I was like, dude, how did you get a pretty girl to come to a Rush concert? And he's like, I married her. Which, look, I married Sheila. She's got no interest in going to, a Rush concert.
Mm-hmm.
And just like she asked me if I wanted to come to Erasure, with her and Jen, in the winter. And I was like, one of the great things about our marriage is like, we don't have to pretend like we need to go to every concert together. Like, I'll have about as much interest in going into Erasure as she would have going to a Rush concert. But I in our friendly little rivalry of what the best prog rock band ever is, I feel like I've gained a point today by learning that like you like Styx because you wanted to hang out with the chicks. I don't know if that was a fair shot or not, but I took it.
I don't know the reason I got turned off. If they were listening to Rush that day, would band or would still be my favorite band? And I don't know the answer.
I don't know, but the thing is like they definitely wouldn't have been. You know what I mean? Like
I do.
That's just not a thing that chicks got together and did.
Right.
All right, my man. Well, listen, I think this has been awesome, and I really appreciate you doing it. It's been a really fun conversation, and I'm hoping that maybe you might be willing to do some more of these in the future, especially if we had anyone listening. Feel free to email me questions for Anthony in the future if there's things you want to know about the world of sushi or owning your own restaurant or anything like that. Would you be up for doing that again?
Six. Yeah, of course, man. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for listening to this one. John Carlson's with me on the next one, telling me everything about what it takes to become a car dealer. And we have a really fun conversation discussing all aspects of that. Thanks. See ya.